We've got to wait for the stream to fire up all across the fruited plains of the internet before we go ahead and get started. Let's make sure that we're alive and well across all of the various platforms. Of course, YouTube is the home base, and it looks like we're alive there. So let's check a couple of the other platforms. We've got Facebook is up. We're over on Rumble. Shout out to Rumble. We're on Twitter, and Twitch is always the one that takes a quick minute or two, but it looks like we're online there as well. So let's go ahead and get started. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live. My name is Robert Gruler. I am a criminal defense attorney here at the R&R Law Group in the always beautiful and sunny Scottsdale, Arizona, where my team and I, over the course of many years, have represented thousands of good people facing criminal charges, and throughout our time in practice, we have seen a lot of problems with our justice system. I'm talking about misconduct involving the police. We have prosecutors behaving poorly. We've got judges not particularly interested in a little thing called justice, and it all starts with the politicians, the people at the top, the ones who write the rules and pass the laws that they expect you and me to follow, but sometimes have a little bit of difficulty doing so themselves. That's why we started this show called Watching the Watchers, so that together with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. And we're grateful that you are here and with us today. It's a lovely Monday. We had a very nice event yesterday over at Eric's house. Special shout out to those of you who were able to stop by and support the show. ericshouse.org, nonprofit organization. We did a live stream for 5 hours yesterday. And so shout out to everybody who came by and supported us. Zulu was there yesterday. Cher, Sean Alexander, Look 2G, Lava Java Lava, another Look 2G. We've got Jenny B, Diane. Many people came by and supported. Wolfgang Deo all day yesterday came by and supported us over on Locals, Radice, and many others. So I just want to say thank you to everybody for chiming in to help that good cause, that charitable organization. A lot of people out there have lost somebody to suicide, overdose, addiction, traumatic death. And so you helped Eric's house to do more with that. Grateful for that. But today on the show, we've got a lot to get into because over the weekend, a lot of people were stranded at the airports. Southwest Airlines had a little bit of a problem with thousands of flights, like over 2,000 of them now, I think is the total count. And they blamed all this on weather. And so the question is that true? We're going to take a look at some of the radar that we pulled from over the weekend. We're going to listen in and see specifically what SWAPA, this is the Southwest Airlines Pilots Association, they are filing a lawsuit against Southwest Airlines. So we're going to go through that lawsuit. We've got some insight from some other people out there reporting a little bit about what's going on here. Is this actually a weather problem, or is this a vaccine opposition walkout? Is this a protest? We're going to break down that story and then take a look, of course, at the lawsuit because Southwest Airlines Pilots Association, they're suing Southwest Airlines over the vaccine mandates. And then in our second segment, we're going to change gears a little bit and talk some tech business. We're going to talk about artificial intelligence, because we have to. An ex-Pentagon software developer, somebody who's sort of the chief of software from the Pentagon, resigned in protest earlier this year, actually in September, a couple months ago, and now he's out there communicating with different people in the media, spoke with Financial Times and told them the U.S. government, the U.S. has already lost the AI race with China. It's over. China won. Nothing we can do about it. They're so far ahead of us that it's a foregone conclusion. No matter what the U.S. does, game over, man. And so we're going to take a look at what is in a new report that came out. It's called the National Security Commission on Artificial Intelligence. This was actually drafted back in March, but I just got my eyes on it now that this ex-Pentagon software chief is telling us that America is doomed. So we're going to take a look at that report. Got some very interesting observations about AI and about what the biggest national security issues are vis-a-vis China. And we're going to break that down. There's some really interesting graphics in there showing how this all works. We've got to make sure that we are communicating and giving our shout outs over to Twitch. Shout out. I got a reminder here from Lauren Watercolor, says, don't forget the Twitch family. And of course I couldn't do that. I apologize to everybody over there on Twitch, but we are growing a nice little audience over there. So shout out over to Twitch as well. Then in our third segment, we're going to chime in and check out what the heck is going on in Florida. Typically we talk about Florida man, but we've got Florida man and Florida woman here, and like 4 people that we have to talk to that are teachers in the Miami-Dade school district, and they're all being charged with crimes against children. And it's not just one defendant, it's like 4 of them. And they've all been back to back. 3 of them have been in October. And then there's this big settlement that just happened. Miami-Dade schools have to pay back $6 million to the victim of one particular teacher. And so what the heck is going on in Florida? We're going to break that down. We have a clip from the court proceeding. We have some formal documents that we're going to take a look at in that segment. And so we want you to be a part of the show. If you want to join in, and this is a live chat, it's better if you do, then the place to do that is at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. There's a form you can see right there. You can submit a question, and you have a little bit more room than you have in the super chats on YouTube. And so if you're a supporter there, we'll make sure we can do our best to get through all of those questions. And if you want to submit a super chat, of course, please do that as well. They show up on the screen right here in real time, just like that. That came in yesterday from Mimi Jovanovic. Thank you, Mimi. And all of that money that came in yesterday, of course, is going over to ericshouse.org. So thank you for all of that. Now, we also have a Clips channel. Don't want to forget the Clips channel. If you come in and the show's just too long, a lot of people say, Rob, it's like 2 hours. What are you doing? Well, you can just go and just queue right up to the Clips over at Robert Gruller ESQ Clips. That's a separate channel there. So, all right, without any further ado, I guess we should get into the news, shouldn't we? Southwest Airlines. Man, a lot of people were stranded over the weekend, continuing into Monday. A lot of people are asking themselves, why did one particular airline cancel thousands of flights? Southwest Airlines is saying, oh, it's just the weather. It's just a normal hiccup. But a lot of other people, internet sleuths, are crawling around the interwebs, and they're able to identify clear weather. And a lot of the other airlines aren't having the same problems. And so if you've been following the news over the weekend and into today, you may have been seeing a lot of scenes that look like this. People just stranded at airports chanting things like, Southwest sucks, here's that. So pretty serious delays. And if you've seen some of the other imagery, there's kids all just laying around in the airports. There's people just scattered all over chairs. It's just like unpleasant is what it looks like. And that's because over 2,000 flights were canceled in the last 3 days. Daily Mail report says that today, on Monday, another 363 were canceled. That is up from the 1,800 that were canceled previously over the weekend. Thousands of passengers were stranded. More than 240 Southwest flights were canceled from Denver alone over the weekend. On Monday, another 970 more were delayed, according to FlightAware. Dallas-based firm canceled 1,800 flights, and they said it was caused by weather and then some staffing issues. So we're going to take a look at this. Now, the Southwest Pilots Union, they denied that the members walked out on the job. And so they're saying that some people are speculating that this was a cause of the vaccine mandate, that people are walking out because they don't want to get the vaccine. But the union is denying that. And so we have this tension that exists right now. We have a lot of people saying, oh, good. Thankfully, the pilots are finally standing up or thankfully standing up and protesting some of this stuff. And people are sort of cheering them on, right? This is a vaccine mandate protest, and people are giving them high fives. And now the mainstream reporting, the news from Southwest Air, they're telling us the opposite. They're saying, oh no, it's not a vaccine protest at all. All that's going on here is just weather problems and some staffing shortages. But other than that, it's all pretty much the same. Business as usual. Federal Aviation Administration, the FAA, denies claims that air traffic controllers staged a mass sick out. So the feds are saying that that is also something that did not happen. Southwest, though, was the only airline that had mass cancellations, according to the latest flight data. Everything else looked good. Company president told staffers that the airline previously had continued to struggle to fill job vacancies, so not really a good idea if you're going to be firing your staff when you already have staffing shortages. But there were a lot of pictures. Screenshots were all over the place saying that people were waiting 8 hours to even speak to customer service. And so I mentioned this, but this was back on October 9th, which would have been on, was that Saturday? So you have here major delays and cancellations. The airline is reporting an air traffic management program put in place because of weather. However, some passengers are hearing that some employees have just walked off the job, right? That's from somebody, Jewel Hillary over on Twitter, just saying that that's what people are hearing who are actually in the airport. And I did spend some time on Twitter watching some of these things, right? People are walking out to the windows at the airport, and it's pretty clear out here. Don't know what the weather problems are, but I'm not air traffic controller. So what do I know? Now, we can go to Southwest Airlines, and they're going to tell us much the same. This is just weather, not a big deal. They posted this back on October 9th when a lot of this was starting, saying that ATC issues and disruptive weather have resulted in a high volume of cancellations throughout the weekend. While we work to recover our operation, appreciate your patience. Sorry, customer service wait times are a lot longer than usual. And so I got flagged. Several people flagged this for me actually on Twitter. Shout out to Left Coast is the best coast over there. And he was sending over some images from Weather Underground saying, that's kind of weird. Where's all this bad weather? And so you saw that was posted on October 9th. That was from Southwest Airlines specifically on Twitter. It's just the weather. Nothing no problems here, just the weather. But when you went over to the radar on October 10th, right around that same time, this is what the weather looked like. And so you can see this is an actual animation of the weather, and we can see a lot of green over there. And if you zoom in up top here, it says rain. The light rain is going to be in green. I don't see any yellows, don't see any reds, don't see any purples, none of that. We see a little bit of light snow in the blue. We see some light snow up here in Canada, up here in Washington, a little bit in the Rockies over in New Mexico, but everything else is green, just light rain, scattered showers, as they say on the Weather Channel. This is Watching the Watchers Weather Edition. This is today. Now, this is something that I pulled from today. We know that a lot of other flights, something like 300, were also canceled here. And so is the weather bad on Monday, October 11th? You can see that that's exactly when this radar was pulled. And so you can see down here, 5:05 p.m. Eastern Time. Let's take a look at this animation. Any yellows? A little bit of yellow. We got a little yellow over here in the Midwest near Illinois, but the rest of it is really green. We have some very light snow you can see up here near Idaho, Montana areas, but it's pretty clear. Don't see much in the way of reds or purples anywhere. And so that caused a lot of people to speculate, and well, maybe this really isn't about the weather. Because if it was about the weather, wouldn't you see the same problems across all of the other airlines? You would suspect, because I don't know that Southwest has a problem flying through clouds, but American Airlines can just zip right through them, right? It's kind of same airplanes, essentially. And so when you take a look at the problems that other airports had, this is what you see, or other airlines. Southwest, this was, as of a couple days ago, 1,000 total cancellations, about 27%. It sounds like of their flights were absolutely just canceled. 2% were delayed. Very, very high number. Let's see. We don't have a similar type of number until we get down to, we got China has some problems in China. Weather, I would presume, is different over there. Air China, another one that has some problems, but we don't get to American Airlines. They only have 61 problems relative to Southwest, 1,008. Lion Air, Wings Air, 35. Saudi Air, a different part of the world. Spirit here, 32 flights canceled. Allegiant, you get the gist of this. But it seems like we have an outlier. It seems like Southwest Airlines is the only one that has any problems. And is it really the weather, or is it in fact something to do with this? This was something that a guy by the name of Steve Goldberg sent out on Monday, October 4, 2021. You see it says SWA Life. It's sort of a memo that goes out to employees. It says the title is Federal Contractor Vaccination Requirement for All Employees. He says, listen, as you heard from Gary in his video, our team have done their due diligence, and we're required, he says, we are required to comply with the government contractor mandate for COVID-19. Goes through that, hey, our legal teams, our regulatory teams, this is what's happening. He says, as a federal contractor, because don't forget that Southwest Airlines got billions of dollars from the feds when they needed stimulus money, right? Feds were just like, take it, whatever you need, here you go. It's a trough for all the big companies out here to come out and just get whatever you need. They did. And so now they're sort of working with the feds on this. If they want that money, they better comport with what the feds want them to do, right? Yeah, he goes on, says, as a federal contractor, we got multiple formal contracts with military and the government. This includes the Civil Reserve Air Fleet with the DOD, supports our military, blah, blah, blah. Now, like other airlines, we got to make sure we comply with what the feds want us to do. Here's the directive to comply with the federal requirement. They say, become fully vaccinated and report your status by November 24th. If you don't get vaccinated, well, going to be some serious repercussions there for you. And so that memo came out October 4th, and just a couple days later, about a week later, we start to see some reaction from the airline employees. Now, Axios is saying it's not about a sick out. It's not people who are just not showing up. Southwest Airlines denies that there was a pilot sick out that drove this weekend of delays. A lot of cancellations come after pilots, we're going to take a look at this, asked a court to block the new COVID vaccine mandate policy. And we're going to take a look at, here coming up shortly, a preliminary injunction and a request that the court stops that October 4th policy that we just shared with you. The union is saying we weren't involved in this negotiation at all. And so if they're going to do this, we want a preliminary injunction. We want to stop this from going into effect. Please, court, help us do that. The reason why this is interesting, airline insiders and conservatives are wondering if the cancellations are part of a sick out. Southwest Pilots Union said, no, not part of a planned labor demonstration. And so we want to take a look at that, right? Is there any particular reason why the Southwest Pilots Union can't communicate about a labor demonstration or any of those? Is this part of their negotiation? Maybe they're not allowed to do that. I don't know. But it says more than 25% of the airline's flights were canceled on Sunday. And we have a press release from somebody over there saying, we can say with confidence that our pilots are not participating in any official or unofficial job actions. They're going to continue to overcome the SWA management's poor planning as well as operational challenges. So somebody from the union is sort of sending that right back over to Southwest Air and saying, yeah, they've got poor planning over there. What you see going on in the airports, nothing to do with us. We have been communicating with them at length about these policies and these different changes. We're not happy with it. Their incompetence is now showing through. The other side, now Southwest is saying the cancellations and the delays were caused by disruptive weather. Already sort of debunked that. Airline is usually proactive with customer support, but now silent on the topic for 24 hours. So they don't know what to do about this. And we're going to take a look at a court document here right now. So as I mentioned, the Southwest Airlines Pilots Association, abbreviated SWAPA. So let's take a look at the header here. It says the Southwest Airlines Pilots Association. So SW for the West, APA, it's going to be SWAPA. They are suing Southwest Airlines Company. And let's take a quick look at the docket before we dive into the lawsuit. So you can see here, a couple things were filed. Now, this is entry number 11. So this was actually filed earlier in the year, but they just filed this stuff immediately after the October 4th policy change came into effect. So they had filed an original complaint saying there was a lot of negotiation happening between SWAPA and between Southwest. They were unhappy about it. But then on October 4th, boom, they just dropped this new COVID policy. And so the lawyers that were already taking this case through the federal courts said, wait a minute, we already filed a claim, but now you say this new policy is going to come into effect in November. We don't have enough time to actually resolve the underlying case. You've accelerated our process. Now we have to respond quickly because we need to stop this from happening. So on October 8th, then you can see that there was a new motion. This is a motion for a temporary restraining order. So it's saying, hey, court, please tell Southwest to stop with the mandate nonsense. They're also asking for a preliminary injunction to tell them to literally stop rolling it out. So whatever policy changes that they wanted to implement across the company, stop it. Then on October 8th, they followed that up with a brief and memorandum in support of the original motion. We're going to take a look at this item, number 12. And then there was an appendix with a whole slew of additional documents, different affidavits and supporting policies and stuff like that. So we're going to skip most of that. We're going to talk about just the memorandum that they're using to justify the claim. So remember, this policy is being rolled out by Southwest. Pilots don't want it to go into effect. They're saying specifically, it's coming soon. And so court, we need you to hurry up. We need you to come in here and stop this from happening. This, again, once again, is the header, but let's point out, being filed in the Northern District of Texas in the Dallas Division. It's a 31-page a brief here, but we're not going to go through it entirely. I just want to point out a couple things about how this is all working. So let's start at the very top. Let's start with a brief introduction, and then we're going to walk through kind of the progression. And the real big crux of the claim here, the real reason why these pilots, I think, are upset, and the basis of this lawsuit is it's sort of uneven negotiation that's taking place. The union is saying, listen, we've got a part in this, right? We're a union. We're we exist to advocate on behalf of the union members. And so if there are going to be decisions made that impact those union members, the union should be a part of the discussion, should be a part of the decision making. And that should, by their account, also apply to COVID. If Southwest Airlines is going to come out and change a bunch of policies that's going to impact the union members, and the union members and the union itself have entered into a working contract, a contractual agreement. We're going to do this for your union. You're going to give us labor. They've come to terms. Southwest, just like Darth Vader, says, I'm altering the deal. Pray I don't alter it any further. The union members are sitting there going, what? That's not what we negotiated at all. And so they're going to give us a little bit of history here. And some of it's a little bit thick, but let's get through it. It says here, to Honorable Chief District Judge Barbara Lynn. The plaintiffs here, which is SWAPA, we have moved this court for a temporary restraining order. We think this is necessary to stop Southwest Airlines from unilaterally issuing new policies and procedures which impact the pilots, their pay, their rules, their working conditions. They have to, they say, under the Railway Labor Act, exert every reasonable effort to not violate the party's status quo. All right. So what they're saying here is they're leaning back on the Railway Labor Act. The union is saying, listen, we've got some terms under that law under which we're incorporated. We were sort of birthed into creation as a result of this act. And in that act, it's telling us that we got to try to maintain the status quo, right? Once we come to an agreement, we've got sort of a good faith opportunity. We've got to make every reasonable effort to maintain that status quo. So the union members say, oh, no, we liked the pre-COVID policy. That was the status quo. Airline pilots, or the actual airline itself, Southwest Air, is coming out and saying, oh, no, we need to change that. The whole world has changed. The entire status quo of everything has changed. And so we need to do the same thing. We're going to make that change. And the union is saying, well, we were not involved in that. That's a dramatic change. That is not the status quo. We should have been brought into the conversation before the baseline was adjusted. That's why they're unhappy. Southwest Airlines, according to the complaint, says that they have unilaterally implemented new policies. Number one being the infectious disease and control policy. We have also an emergency extended time off program. We have a COVID quarantine policy. We have a vaccine participation pay program. We've got flight crew instructors program. We've got a new mandatory COVID vaccine policy. All right, so it's like 6 different policies right there that Southwest just unilaterally rolled out without negotiations, without bargaining with SWAPA. Each new policy violated the party's status quo and is an issue with a major dispute that requires the parties to maintain that status quo. So they're saying that because Southwest Airlines just keeps doing whatever the heck they want to do, this motion and the injunctions are necessary. And that was just the introduction. They give us a big, long list of the origination of SWAPA and the origination of the contracts. They say, look, back 25 years ago when we first started negotiating, this is where we started. This was the baseline. And it's slowly been changing right from under their grasp. And then, lo and behold, in paragraph 47 now, we're going to fast forward in the memorandum, it says on October 4th, 2021, that was the same memo that I showed previously. We now have Southwest Airline announcing its vaccine mandate, made it a condition of new employment for pilots, and threatened termination for noncompliance, all of which conflict with the parties' negotiated terms. None of this, they say, was agreed to by SWAPA. Gary Kelly made the announcement at 2 p.m. that morning. Southwest Airlines set up a call with SWAPA after Gary made the decision to brief SWAPA. So Gary Kelly just, wakes up, has a bad cup of coffee, says, all right, I'm sick of this COVID stuff. Everybody's getting the vaccine. Go tell the union. So then somebody calls the union, that has all of the employees and says, hey, Gary had a bad morning. He says, you're all getting the vaccine now. I just needed to call and brief you. So SWAPA's like, that's not how that works here. Says there was no give or take within the briefing. Instead, management hurriedly dumped its plans on the union. By this 11th hour, there was no time, no opportunity for any meaningful dialogue or input, let alone bargaining. Right? There was nothing that happened. Southwest thought that they were Joe Biden, that they can just do whatever the hell they want and everybody's just going to fall into line, largely because everybody has. So it's not a bad strategy. Just says, oh, it's our property now. CDC said so. It's his. Okay, I guess that's the new America. So that is also how Southwest is operating. We're just going to do whatever we say because somebody told us to do it. and we'll deal with the consequences after the fact. Pilots, of course, were not happy about that. Same day on October 4th, we then get Captain Alan Kasher. He's an executive vice president over there. He joined a SWAPA board of directors meeting, and Captain Kasher fielded many questions and many concerns by the union members. It was highlighted that Southwest Airlines' biggest competitors like United, Delta, American Airlines, they all had collectively bargained for rights. Specifically, each of the other airlines had reached out to their respective labor unions at the beginning of the pandemic in May, had negotiated COVID letters of agreements for their force. But when asked point blank about why that didn't happen here, he could only admit that Southwest Airlines was wrong in failing to collectively bargain. So sounds like they maybe missed a step before they issued their mandates. We're going to wrap this lawsuit up before we jump into questions over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. But he finishes up, he says in paragraph 49, Southwest Airlines, their cavalier disregard has significant consequential and detrimental impact for the union. Their continued and repeated unilateral actions have wholly upended the status quo, effectively destroyed the union's ability to bargain on behalf of its members. With each of these actions, our phones and emails, they're being flooded with questions and concerns for membership. Okay, so that's kind of a pretty good indication here that pilots and people who work at Southwest are not happy about any of this. This is from the union itself. It says the resulting chaos of these and a multitude of unanswered questions have resulted in a drain on SWAPA's resources and the ability to represent its membership, and that none of this was envisioned by the drafters of the Railway Labor Act. And so for these reasons, they say that the court should issue a temporary, preliminary, and a permanent injunction enjoining Southwest Airlines as set forth in the motion. Now, the big question, right, everybody's sort of having to speculate about, was this really a walkout? Was this a sick out? Is this a vaccine protest? And a lot of people are pointing to the fact that they kind of maybe can't talk about what it is. Maybe the people who are actually doing the protesting or the walkout or the sick out, they're doing it cleverly so they don't have to break the prior agreement. Something similar came across from a guy named Alex Berenson. He got banned off of Twitter, and he's now writing over at Substack, and he gives us a little bit of an insight. He got an email from a Southwest Airlines pilot. He says why you will not hear anything about this from his union and why Southwest has more flexibility than it admits to stand up to the White House. So this pilot emailed Alex earlier following the first Southwest post today. This pilot provided his SWA ID to prove his identity, asked that he paraphrase the email. Here's what he says. It says, essentially, the union cannot organize or even acknowledge the sick out because doing so would make it an illegal job action. Years ago, Southwest and its pilots, they had a rough negotiation. The union would not even let the pilots internally discuss the possibility of the working two rule, which would have slowed Southwest to a crawl. The working two rule, as I understand it, is it's not full work. It's not a strike where you're not working. It's sort of like going in and doing the absolute bare minimum. It's called the working two rule to something like that. The analogy would be like, okay, if you're a nurse, your job is to intubate the patient or whatever it is nurses do, right? Hook people up to IVs, take amazing care of them. All of that is good. If a nurse is working too, and the phone rings, she's not answering the phone. She's not picking up the fax. She's not doing any of that other stuff because that's not her job, right? It's the absolute bare minimum. Oh, just going to go inject that IV. Or it's like, it's somebody doing the absolute bare minimum. I think you get the point of it. But at the moment, the pilots don't even have to talk to each other about what they're doing. The anger internally, he says, this is from the pilot, not just among pilots, but other Southwest workers, is enormous. The tough prior negotiations notwithstanding, Southwest has a history of decent labor relations, and workers believe the company should stand up for them against the mandates. Telling pilots in particular to comply or face termination has backfired. It says, meanwhile, Southwest has more flexibility than its acknowledged federal contracts represent about 3% of its revenue, but even the Biden administration cannot alter existing contracts. Southwest is only at risk of losing future contracts. So this pilot believes that the fact that the airlines received $25 billion in no strings attached cash for payroll support last year, as well as another $25 billion in loans, has made them especially reluctant to stand up to Biden. Gary Kelly is in a tough spot since he's head of the airlines. Now, Pilot obviously says that the crisis is painful, but this is the only way to stand up to the mandates. The question is, what do you have to say about it? What do you think about this story? Let's jump into watchingthewatchers.locals.com questions over at the place to, here it is. We've got our first one. Oh, it's from the Taliban Flying Academy. Oh, that's nice. They're here. It says, thanks to Mr. Biden, we have well-trained pilots ready to go. Hashtag diversity is strength, except women pilots is gross. So the Taliban's ready to fly, right? If Southwest Airlines pilots have, basically become domestic terrorists now for not getting vaccinated, then that's okay, because our new international partners over there in Afghanistan, the new and improved Taliban, they're ready to go. And they've got a lot of experience flying planes, or maybe they don't. Who knows about that one? Vientica says, I guess the bright side of this is that there weren't any planes that got decommissioned mid-flight while having its crew laid off, leaving them nowhere to land the thing and the crew starving. Apparently this happened to a cargo ship. What? Okay, that's an interesting story. It got decommissioned in the middle of the flight? Well, that's too bad. Hopefully they made it. Vienticus also says, it really was the weather that kept all these flights down. People were feeling under the weather. There it is. And so that's how you can squeeze two meanings out of one word. Well done. Speech Unleashed says, maybe the airline heard about this page for Let's Go Brandon and decided to call off. Let's see what this is, Speech. Good to see you. Let's see if we can pull this up. Let's Go Brandon at the airport. All right, we can play this. This doesn't look like a copyright problem. Let's see here. All right, we've got this clip from Speech Unleashed.
American was taking passenger Let's Go Brandon. Please report it to Mr. Party. Passenger Let's Go Brandon. Please report it to Mr. Party.
All right, so Let's Go Brandon over the intercom over there at the airport. It's everywhere, folks. That thing has really gone viral. Love it. John Halgren says, for what it's worth, reached out to my FedEx captain brother-in-law, asked him about the Southwest issue. He contacted a Southwest captain who confirmed it was an air traffic control sick out. Union cannot support a sick out or any other work stoppage or slowdown. That would violate their contract. But if you're cough sick, well, that's what it is. Yeah, I mean, listen, you don't want to spread the coronavirus anywhere. You got the sniffles, you got to stay home, especially if you're at Southwest, especially if you're somebody who thinks that you're going to get fired in November. Better make sure you use all that sick time, all that vacation time, squeeze it all in right now. Standing up for it. Thanks, John. And thanks for the sleuthing over there. Very well done. Todd Trout is here, says, has the gaslighting just become an epidemic? No other airlines had weather issues. I think people will buy anything these days. Have you been following Joe Biden's Twitter? It's amazing. It really is amazing. Like he takes it. It's a pretty amazing skill set. He'll take a terrible number like a low jobs report from September where we had about, not a third, I would say 40, 50% lower, 50 to 60% lower expectations. Expecting about 500,000, about 193,000, so about 60% maybe. And that is not so, I don't do math, obviously, you all know this, but this is something that is problematic for many people. People who saw this come across the news go, oh, that's bad, really bad numbers. Joe Biden comes out and he's like, well, listen, if you average it all in together, every single month that I've had has been over whatever, so he does tricky math, or the people who are actually, preparing his tweets. Very clever, very sneaky, incredibly dishonest, but that's how things are now. Southwest Airlines, oh, they're here, says the weather is different for us. Those peasants are flying unvaccinated. The vaccines make the human body more heavy. We need time to account for the weight of the vaccine and the rising fuel prices. That makes total sense. Thank you for telling us that, Southwest Airlines. Amazing. Thunder 7 says the pilots had a strike or a sick out, and then many air traffic controllers didn't show up for work in certain airports. The protest is going to go nationwide. Nobody's going to be able to fly. The Biden regime will have to totally back off mandating the jabs, as the blowback is just starting with the police and the military getting ready to leave or be fired for not getting the vaccine. Complete chaos and economy collapse coming with these mandated vaccines. Food shortages soon. Yeah, I think you're totally right, Thunder 7. And the question, so I was communicating on Twitter, and something I posted was the idea that maybe things will get so bad that they have to back off the mandates, right? They actually have to say, oh, well, how are they going to do that? Well, it's going to be pretty easy. Joe Biden's just going to manipulate those numbers like I was talking about. He already did this previously. He came out and he said, oh, American Airlines, they went from 59% of their employees being vaccinated to 99% in 2 months. Amazing. Vaccine mandates work. How'd that happen? Oh, well, they fired a bunch of people. Yeah, and then they threatened their livelihood and said, if you don't get it, you're going to be fired. So big swaths of people went and got it. The other people got fired. Boom, there you go. You got like 99% vaccination rates. So, maybe they'll continue to do that. We have Nadarb here. The climate guy says, the reason you can't see any weather is because it's a new variant of climate change. Yes, that's right. That we can't detect using radar from the old world. I would explain it, but it's complicated and stuff. Just buy some carbon credits for me to offset your footprint, and I'll do the hard part. We'll get this turned around in no time. That's from Nadarb, the climate guy. I always forget about the variants. Yeah, it's a problem. Donald Trump says, Rob is the greatest YouTuber ever to YouTube, and everyone knows it. And it's China, not China. China. Like that. Donald Trump, I can't ever compete with his version of it. Obviously, it's very good. Nadarb says, has OSHA or anyone from the feds even put out guidelines or anything to date? Not to my knowledge, honestly. Not to mention the actual approved medicine, not the EUA medicine, technically not being, it says, so how do they do it without it being approved or having guidelines? I have not seen the guidelines. So when they say specifically that we're following federal, whatever those are, I don't know where those are coming from. I really don't. And I've poked around to find them. And I shared an article on Twitter about that specifically, that it's kind of a bunch of talk right now. There's no official OSHA guidelines. I could be wrong. Maybe that came out today, but I have not seen it yet. Let's see who else we've got in the house. That was from Nadarb. Next up, we've got Sergeant Bob says, thus a union is doing its job. Let us see medical, police, fire, city, and state workers follow suit. It's a topsy-turvy world out there. It's like these unions are, maybe they're doing something interesting, doing something maybe even good for once. Jeremy Matrita says, Rob, hopefully contract law will help save the day. They are correct to protest changes in contract terms. Generally speaking, what are the typical remedies under contract law? This is a great example of why politicians can't just go around mandating things without taking into consideration all the consequences. It's a good question, Jeremy. So let's just game out the lawsuit that we just talked through. They're asking for exactly what they want, right? The union is saying we want to come back to the negotiating table. And the way that they're going to get that is by stopping the current changes from going into effect. That's why it's a preliminary injunction. It is asking the court to tell them that they're not lawfully allowed to do this. Otherwise, it would be a breach of contract, right? And so they're sort of, Southwest is going outside of their hula hoop. They're stepping outside of that. And the union is saying, you got to get back in there. And so they're trying to return this to the original terms. Now, as a consequence of the original breach, they're going to be asking for attorney's fees, and they're going to be, they're going to use this in their negotiations for better terms or whatever. But they're asking for what they want. They just do not want this to go into effect. They want to make sure that they are brought back to the negotiating table, and there will be, if they win, if they're successful, they're going to ask for consequences to remedy the expense, the time that their lawyers have received, that all of these different union members have, suffered, right? You heard from the union itself saying that they're getting emails and phone calls, and people are freaked out about this. Am I going to lose my job? Am I going to be able to, provide food for my wife and kids or whatever? And there's going to be damages that are connected to all of that. And I'm sure the union later down the line, once the rule is stopped in the first place, will then come back and ask that those damages be included in some way, shape, or form. Another one from Peely Wally is here, says, Rob, just wanted to say I watched a bunch of that stream yesterday, and much respect and love for me to you and everyone affected by suicide. What a lovely show that was. Thank you, Peely. Says, as far as mandates are concerned, I applaud the pilots for taking a stand. The more people that take stands against mandates and regulations in the U.S. and the U.K. regarding COVID, the better. This has got nothing to do with saving lives. It's all about control and a money grab by big pharma companies. That's from Peely Wally. Yeah, I've long said that I'm not real sure how much about health a lot of this is. I mean, really, we don't talk about anything else health related. It's always this Newtonian medicine. It's the idea that, you've got this, take this. You've got a concern about COVID, just go take the shot. And nobody talks about weight loss or exercise or proper health care or any of those things. And it hasn't been that way for 18 months. Nobody's done anything about that. Still don't have any real rapid home test. A lot of problems that I have with it. And now the biggest problem that I have are the mandates. It's mandating people to do something that is not the default in America. The default here is freedom. Last I checked. We have Look 2G says sounds like the Southwest decided not to live to an agreement with the union. Also, it sounds like the employees have a gag order or something. Question: if Southwest breached an agreement, would a gag order still be valid? So I'm not sure that it is actually a gag order. So in fact, I'm very sure that it's not. I can't say that. If the union is voluntarily not communicating about these things, if the pilots, for example, are not approaching the media and saying, hey, we have an organized walkout, right, that would be a violation of their contract agreement, according to that email from a pilot from Alex Berenson. So if that is the case, then it's not that the court ordered them gagged. The court didn't say, you can't talk. It's them sort of on their own not communicating about it. They're saying that, no, we're not organized. We're not doing anything. We're not violating the terms of we're just sick today. Oh, no, I'm sick, got the sniffles, COVID, and they're telling us to stay home. And so that's it. If there was a breach of a gag order, or if there was some consequence for violating a court order down the line, right, that would be something where somebody literally could be held in contempt of court for breaching a prior order. And there could be all sorts of consequences that would spiral out of that decision. You might literally lose the case if it's a situation like that. Good question. A couple more here before we jump into the next segment. We got Monster One says, it was too sunny. Everyone knows you can't fly when it's sunny out. Yes, that's right. Global warming and all that. The sun monster will melt the wings like Icarus. That's true. Probably that global warming. Is the ozone layer still broken up there? Maybe the airline pilots were a little bit concerned about the ozone layer, or that acid rain that I forgot about. Jay Heath says, I don't know why all these companies are freaking out. The mandate hasn't even been put into effect yet. Biden just wants the country to think that it already has, because they're acting accordingly, aren't they? They all are. Wild times. You don't even have to actually legally comply people to do anything anymore. Don't even need a rule, because the compliant will comply themselves. They just go, oh gosh, thank you. I was concerned about what to do with my life and my company. Now that Joe Biden has given me cover to do this, I guess I'm just going to go and bend the knee and do whatever he tells me to do. Thank you. I had a really difficult time thinking for myself. Now I don't have to do that. Perfect. Just going to follow your orders and do whatever you tell me to do. And there's not even a rule that says they have to do it. It just happens because the compliant will do the complying for you. That's the new world we live in. Monster One says, how dare you question the Taliban's flying skill? They managed to fly skillfully in 3 buildings. 3 buildings. Yeah, and they got 2 buildings with 1 plane, which is really impressive. I mean, also another really impressive flying feat. That's true. The Taliban. Oh yeah, the Taliban are talking about. We're infested with the Taliban here today. Ice Wolf says, can't blame them. I got the shot, so tired about being asked about paperwork. Now I wish I didn't get it. Not sure if I can catch the live the rest of the week. So have a good week. And remember the like button. That's from Ice Wolf. Well, we're going to miss you, Ice Wolf. Thanks for being here today. Hope you have a great rest of your week. We have Greta Thunberg says, the Biden administration blamed global warming for the flight canceling weather yet? No, but somebody else here on the show did. So maybe Biden will later down the line. We have Vanticus says, even with actions like this, I still worry about people being forced out of jobs. Perhaps this was just before they got to force people out and replace them with the military too. Along those lines, I'm half waiting to hear about a central bank digital currency, CBDCs, being introduced as, quote, the solution to an unvaccinated black market. Even though it'll do nothing. I forgot to clip this on the show today, but there is a guy who runs a Twitter account called the Palmer Report. And he posted something. I'm mad at myself. I didn't clip this. He posted something to the effect saying that people who are sort of walking out on Southwest are 1 step away from domestic terrorists. I was joking about that earlier, but he runs the Palmer Report. He's got a big website and a huge following on Twitter. And he said that these Southwest pilots were 1 step away from being domestic terrorists. And then he said, in the next tweet that everybody was outraged about that. And he said, yeah, you're outraged now, but you're probably not going to be in 6 months from now. And you know what? I got to tell you what, I think he's right about that. You're going to hear a lot more of this language. You're going to hear people, police officers, firefighters, lawyers. It's coming for us too. You're going to hear it across the board that people who are standing up for this, they are wrecking America. They're wrecking supply chains. They are responsible for schools being closed and for hospitals. We're already hearing it with hospitals. They're responsible for all the hospitals being overflowing with unvaccinated people. It's absolutely where the narrative is going to go, and he hit the nail on the head, I think. Going to hear a lot more about that. We have another one from Lorenzo Greasy Bottoms is here. It's been a long time, Lorenzo. Says, if this were really about safety, how come Biden just recently came out with this order? It's a good question. Yeah, I think you're talking about the OSHA mandates. And he actually hasn't rolled out any official rules yet. Good question. Good to see you, Lorenzo. I don't know. Maybe it's just now. I don't know. Southwest Captain says, better to be alive than to have a job that might kill me 30,000 feet in the air. Big Pharma won't pay my family compensation, so better that we are too sick to ever work again. Southwest Captain. I got to be careful with some of the slang terms for the vaccine. YouTube doesn't like some of those. We have Sergeant Bob says, Biden does not think it is his operators. Yeah, they just basically wheel him from room to room at this point. And BLM says the unvaccinated black market, that's racist, is what they say, which is true. We didn't mean it, that way, but yeah, an unvaccinated black market. Yeah. It is pretty racist. All right. Those are great questions over from watchingthewatchers.locals.com. A super chat came in from Dab Gangster. Says, Rob, Denver airport was super busy yesterday. Ironically, my flight was canceled, but that was due to bureaucratic nonsense. Allegations of a walkout seem to be accurate. That's from Dab Gangster over there in the house. And let's give some shout outs. We got user1121 over on Rumble. Says that the Rumble video is crisper than YouTube. Says that a lot of this is Chinese propaganda. Strike would be illegal. Yeah, the Southwest variant. It's much worse than the Delta variant. Yeah, Southwest variant versus the Delta. Those are both airlines. Over on YouTube, we've got shout-outs to Zorro, Stace on the case. We have Danette in the house, Don Gillis. We have Pamela Daly, Lisa S. She's over at USA Smitty on Twitter. Lisa S. just joined us on YouTube. That comment was getting flagged. We're going to show that comment. But a lot of great support. And, of course, over on Locals, the great questions came in and chatting away over there. Shout-outs to Mustang Jeff, Jumpin' Jeff. We've got Joey Bandolero, Look 2Gs over there. And V. Enticus is in the house as well. And thank you for all of your support. All right, we have another segment coming up. We're going to change gears a little bit. We're going to talk about China and how they're kicking the United States' butts in artificial intelligence. Has the United States already lost the artificial intelligence war with China? Somebody says yes. The guy's name is Nicholas Chai Lan, and he said already lost. He's the ex-Pentagon software chief. He's recognizing that all Americans have a pretty good reason to be angry as Beijing heads for global dominance. So we're going to hear from Nicholas here. He actually resigned in September, and he wrote a fiery letter to them, and he's speaking out now. He's doing a lot more live talks on LinkedIn, and he communicated with the Financial Times for the first time, giving us some pretty strong language, some good details about just how far behind the U.S. is in the race for artificial intelligence. So we're going to take a look at that. Then we're also going to take a look at another government study, a sort of a report that was embodied by this big commission. It's over 700 pages, and it's laying out the full spectrum of artificial intelligence, how this is going to be something that is crucial to national security in the coming decade. And so they're giving us an outline on how the United States can maybe reach parity with China by 2025. And so let's go through this, some very interesting stuff. Even if you're not a tech person, the world is going this way. So it's best to be prepared for, I think, some challenging technology issues. This guy's name is Nicholas Chai Lan. He's the Pentagon's first chief software officer. He resigned in protest at the slow pace of technological transformation in the U.S. military. He could not stand to watch China overtake America. And so he resigned, right? That's what people do when they're upset about stuff. Not like what General Milley did. and gets on the phone with Nancy Pelosi complaining about Trump's big fat butt. That's not the appropriate thing to do. Not appropriate to round up the Joint Chiefs and sort of run your pseudo-military operation on your own, call your enemies in China, hey, we're going to warn. That's not how you protest. You don't take control and usurp a leader. You resign in protest and you start speaking out about it. And that's exactly what this guy's doing. In his first interview since leaving the post at the DOD a week ago, he told the Financial Times that the failure of the U.S. to respond to China's cyber threats was putting his children's future at risk. Says, quote, we have no competing fighting chance against China in 15 to 20 years. Right now, it's already a done deal. It's already over, in my opinion, he said, saying there is good reason to be angry because we have a bunch of incompetent bureaucrats out there in DC who only apparently can fight about, masks and vaccine mandates, can't actually recognize a real threat when they see one. Chai Lan is 37 years old, spent 3 years on a Pentagon-wide effort to boost cybersecurity, and is the first chief software officer for the U.S. Air Force, said Beijing is headed for global dominance because of its advances in artificial intelligence, machine learning, and cyber capabilities, which is obviously true. Okay, we've seen many headlines, many stories, some of them we've talked about on this show, talking about China constantly having the fastest supercomputer in the world, talking about Chinese operations to sort of integrate themselves into 5G through Huawei. Donald Trump had a big push against Huawei. We see just sort of infiltration technologically across the board. TikTok, a Chinese app, has more view time, I last read, than YouTube does. They're a bigger video provider than YouTube by some metrics. And so slowly sort of, integrating themselves into technology that's all being run by algorithms. Meanwhile, the United States government has to pay off ransom people who hack our gas pipelines over on the East Coast. They're like, oh, I guess we can't figure out what to do about this, so we better just write them a check for $6 million. Incompetence. He argued that these emerging technologies were far more critical to America's future than hardware like the big budget 5th generation fighter jets, like the F-35, right? Because the next war is not going to take place kinetically. It says, quote, whether it takes a war or not is kind of anecdotal, he said, arguing China was set to dominate the future of the world, controlling everything from media, narratives to geopolitics. Said U.S. cyber defenses in some government departments were at a, quote, kindergarten level. Also blamed Google for failing to work with U.S. defense on AI, says that there are extensive debates over AI ethics for slowing the U.S. down, but by contrast, Chinese companies are obligated to work with Beijing. They're making a massive investment into AI without regard to ethics. They don't care about it. They just want it to be the best. Everything else can wait. Chai Lan said he plans to testify to Congress coming up about the Chinese cyber threat in the coming weeks. And so a lot more will come of this. I think that he's probably dead right that the U.S. is pretty much failing everywhere you look right now. The 20-year war in Afghanistan, the exit there was a disaster, running away while being shot at, people falling out of airplanes. We have about 200,000 people coming across the border, wide open border every month. We have fights over, schools and equity and critical race theory. We have infrastructure failing across the board. Supply chains are wrecked. Inflation's through the roof. And China's just full steam ahead, building out their military superstructure and crushing the U.S. on AI. So some people in the bureaucracy there in D.C. said, maybe we should do a report on this. Let's get a bunch of people around and study this and write a big, fat 756-page document that's probably going to sit on a bunch of people's desks somewhere and not result in anything meaningful. We'll see, but we are going to take a quick look at the report. You can see here 756 full pages. This came back out in March 2021. This is the final report from the National Security Commission on Artificial Intelligence. So that's good. We've got a bunch of people now who are going to tell us what to do. Let's see if some of their advice will be tainted. We have here, starting off, it says, listen, on a level playing field, U.S. is capable of out-innovating any competitor. It's true. However, today, there's a fundamental difference in the U.S. and China. American AI leadership is in peril. For decades, U.S. innovation has been the model of envy of the world. Open exchange of ideas. Tech firms in the United States compete for market share. They're not instruments of state power. The international flow of capital and AI-related commerce is encouraged, he says. Most AI progress in the U.S. should remain with private sectors and universities, but a more fully distributed approach is not a winning strategy here. Even large tech firms cannot be expected to compete with China. We will need a hybrid approach, meshing government and private sector efforts to win the technology competition. And so this was something that really resonated with me. It made a lot of sense, right? You can have Googles, you can have Apples, you can have all of the different Amazons and all the different big tech companies that we have working really hard, working really well, and producing good stuff. But if you have an entire country that's dedicating everything and also just gobbling up all of the top talent from their own companies, right? They have their own Facebook, they have their own Google, they have their own Amazon in China, and they've got 1 billion people to serve, or 1.3 at this point, much bigger population than the United States. Similarly, they also have many corporations in the United States that are beholden to their markets. You see this with the NBA. You see this with some of the big tech tycoons like Mark Cuban. Everybody like John Cena, they just roll over there because they want access to their markets. And so if the Chinese now, if Google wants access to the Chinese market, well, they're not going to compete with China, are they? And so everybody is sort of being gobbled up by this gigantic force. Meanwhile, the U.S. is talking about masks. The report tells us that China is organized, they're resourced, they're determined to win the technology competition. AI is central to China's global expansion, their economic and military power, and domestic stability. It has a head start in executing a national AI plan. It's going to lead the world in several critical and emerging technologies. Beginning in 2017, they established AI goals, objectives, strategies. They have specific timelines. They want to be committed to lead the world in AI by 2030. They're executing a centrally directed, systematic plan to extract AI knowledge from abroad through espionage, talent recruitment, technology transfer, and investments. So all that stuff that Google is working on, well, the Chinese are probably just going to grab it and take it right back home. It has ambitious plans to build and train a new generation of AI engineers, new AI hubs. It's got national champion firms. It's got Huawei, Baidu, Alibaba, Tencent, iFlyTech, SenseTime. They're leading technology developments in AI at home. They've got advanced state-directed priorities that feed military and security programs under military-civil fusions. They're capturing markets abroad, massive digital infrastructure. They developed IP strategy, intellectual property strategy, and its laws make it all but impossible for a company in China to shield its data from the authorities, right? Here in the United States, we have a right to privacy. Your data on Facebook stays with Facebook, theoretically, even though Snowden told us that they're gobbling up everything at some level. So, but you have these divisions, right? You have to go get a warrant before you go get somebody's private records in the United States. In China, if you want to operate a tech company, you just got to comply. Everything that you work on, all of your data, also the Chinese government's data. And so they're working with a much bigger data set than the US. And now they're capturing parts of the market here with TikTok, right? If that's going to be displacing YouTube, okay, might be getting more watch time on TikTok. That's why YouTube's rolling out shorts and try to catch up, but might be too little too late. This study continues. It gives us 2 details about 2 major national security challenges if China continues to create some distance here. Number 1, digital dependence in all walks of life increases vulnerability to cyber intrusion. Could impact corporations, universities, government organizations, homes of individual citizens. New sensors are out there flooding the world. We have this thing called the Internet of Things now. Everything's connected. Cars, phones, homes, social media platform, everything's collecting data. It's all being fed into AI systems that can identify, target, and manipulate or coerce our citizens. So what if you have, let's say, 100 million Americans on TikTok and the Chinese just say, oh, well, we're just, we don't like Donald Trump anymore. And so we're just going to make sure that all of the content in the TikTok algorithm goes to punish Donald Trump. They just make that switch, and it happens on 100 million phones all across the United States. They can make those minor adjustments. We just heard from this fake Facebook whistleblower previously saying that Facebook knows that their algorithms can actually rewire kids' brains. It's actually manipulating people into changing who they are and how they believe and altering their moods. And China's going to have an entire supercomputer that's capable of doing that. Second, and it says state and non-state adversaries are challenging the U.S. below the threshold of direct military confrontation. They're using cyber attacks, espionage, psychological and political warfare, financial instruments. Adversaries do not need AI to conduct widespread cyber attacks, but they can. AI is going to change these attacks in kind and in degree, creating new threats to the U.S. economy, critical infrastructure, and societal cohesion. Moreover, these AI capabilities will be used across the spectrum of conflict, used as a first resort in non-military conflicts and as a prelude to military and kinetic actions. So it's kind of scary stuff. When I was reading a little bit more about this, and I was trying to analogize the difference in what AI will do. And so I read this somewhere. I can't remember where I read it, but the analogy was, okay, let's rewind the clock. Let's go back to the 1700s, okay? Not even that far back. Let's go back to the founding of America, and we can say, okay, it's George Washington, and he's sitting in a room with John Adams, and he's saying, listen, I want to celebrate my birthday. So we're going to get all the founding fathers who are spread out across the 13 colonies, and we're going to throw a birthday party for George Washington. We're going to celebrate it. And it's going to be a lot of fun. How are we going to do that? Well, we gotta get a letter, and so write down the date, make an invitation, and then we're going to put that in an envelope. We're going to seal it. We're going to give it to a bunch of couriers. They're going to ride across horseback, all the way down to Ben Franklin's house. They're going to say, "Hey, Ben, George Washington's having a birthday. You want to come?" He says, "Oh, let me think about it." Takes a couple days, checks his calendar. Gets his assistant. "Oh, I don't think I have anything coming up." Says, "Okay, I think I'll go to the party. Let me RSVP." Gives that back to another courier, sends that back to George Washington, and then he finally gets it. And that happens, maybe times 100 different founding fathers. Okay, so that all gets done. And how long does that take? That's like a month, multiple months. Some people don't ever get it. Some people are dead by the time the package gets back. The whole thing's just kind of a mess, but it gets done, right? It's a big process. Fast forward to today, a mere 300 years later, and now what we're looking at is you go on Facebook, you create an event, you send that out to 1,000 friends, they respond immediately. It's done. You have it all organized. In fact, Facebook, if you don't even have any friends, it will suggest friends for you. And then it's going to put it on your calendar. It's going to give you a reminder. You can have a bunch of comments, a bunch of content. You can share videos on there. You can change the party's date. You can just, we're going to move it from Sunday to Saturday. And here's what to bring. It's a whole different magical world. And if you try to communicate that back to somebody in the 1700s, they'd say, "What are you talking about? Are you a psycho person? That's not even a thing. What do you There's a web of computers across the entire world. Everybody can communicate in real time. That's like lunacy. That's witchcraft. We're going to burn you. Get the hell out of our country." Right? That's kind of how that conversation would go. When AI comes into place, we are going to be the people in the 1700s. We're going to be looking around going, how is any of this happening? How does it know this? What's happening around the world? It's going to be so far removed from levels of understanding that it's going to be like that difference. And that's some scary stuff. Here's artificial intelligence in context, according to this report. It's not a single piece of hardware. It's got integration all over the place. So uses for deployed AI today, it tells us planning and optimization. We have computer vision, modeling and simulation, natural language understanding. This is all taking place now. They're going to be researching novel learning, edge computing, advanced reasoning, more general AI, human AI teaming up. Going to be looking at science and smart cities and healthcare and space and education. Here's the current application of some AI concepts. Let's say a prediction. So it can say, how about preventative vehicle maintenance or precision agriculture? Planning and optimization for transportation in cities. We've got modeling and simulation. So talking about COVID-19 research, they can track space debris. This is current AI that can do all this stuff. Rich human-computer interaction. So machines can process, analyze, they can understand, they can mimic human language, either written or spoken language. Computer vision, livestock monitoring, perceive visual tasks through cameras and sensors. And then we have robotics and process automation. But this is where they're looking forward to in the future. Again, in healthcare, advancing AI-assisted disease prevention, so cardiovascular disease and stroke, biological sensors, healing the blind, telehealth robots, so robots that can just sort of take care of your body from afar, that automatically. We can talk about science, accelerating the development of materials, drug and vaccine discovery, autonomous aircraft and spacecraft, and smart habitats. We have dynamic curriculum augmentation, remote digital tutors that use virtual and augmented reality. Now you're going to be learning from computers. Why does everybody need to sit around in a math class and learn calculus and garbage? Not saying that calculus is garbage. I just don't like math. I'm not any good at it. But why do I need to be involved in that? What if you had a teacher that was a digital teacher that taught you exactly what you were capable of learning and you were really good at it in a really sophisticated way? You could gobble up huge swaths of data. How does the whole world change if that happens? Smart cities. We've got connected smart sensors, bridges, the movement of goods, and so on. But this is where we talk about the different societal levels of conflict. So this is where stuff can become problematic. AI-enabled information operations. So now you can take strategic sites based on better data. Cyber attacks. We have data harvesting, targeting of individuals, an adversarial AI, and biotechnology. Lots of stuff coming out there. And we can also see here that this is how the U.S. government is delineating all these different threats. Biotechnology threats. We have data harvesting. We have malign information operations, cyber attacks and malware, and adversarial attacks on AI. So sort of stealing and biasing other AI systems. So their AI comes and impacts your AI. Not good. The department must also act now to integrate AI into their systems, they say. Ways to do it, they need to go and get a bunch of people to be recruited into this stuff. The DoD and the intelligence community, they face an alarming talent deficit. They got to organize, recruit, build, employ, and build out the AI counterbalance to China. Now, user over on Rumble says specifically, this is encouraging a police state. Don't bite on this, because what this is intending to do is to create the U.S. version of the same system of control that China is working to. And I think it's a very astute point, actually. I've sort of seen it in this way. If you're sort of pro big government or pro totalitarian control, much like China is, they want a super state that gobbles up everything, that controls all of the different enterprises there. How would you do that? What's the best way that you can do that? It's very difficult to monitor everything all the time. The best way to do that would be with AI, with an artificial intelligence, with computers that could just monitor everything in real time and make some decisions based on that data. That would give them total control. They'd have cameras and sensors everywhere. They could monitor every single transaction that happens financially, make sure everything is being done according to their dictates, which is scary as hell. And so the opposite of that, so AI in that context is very centralized. It is something that exists under the power of the Chinese Communist Party. The opposite of that, in my opinion, is always decentralization. Where is the solution with decentralization? More locality, less oversight, less micromanagement of all of our lives. Where does that live? Crypto, in Bitcoin, in Ethereum, and all of these different alternatives. These are decentralized protocols that exist, that are censorship resistant, that are the counterbalance to AI. And so we're going to be living in a world with both of those competing interests in full steam ahead. You're going to have anonymity and privacy and decentralization movements taking place in the crypto space. It's financial right now, but that's going to birth into something that is hardened and robust and protected by cryptography and game theory. And that's going to counterbalance, I think, a lot of these moves towards AI. And as society continues to bifurcate, we're going to see people landing in both of those camps. It's going to be an interesting world. Brave new world, as they say. Let's see what else you have to say about this over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Then we're going to jump into our final segment of the day, which is about some really troubling teachers. And so we're going to get into that shortly enough. Let's see what we've got here. Vientikis says, what's all this nonsense that China won the AI war? Have you seen Mark Zuckerberg? He's obviously AI. We already won already. The AI is pretty bad for Zuckerberg. It's like an old version. They could really upgrade the human functionality there. That'd be nice. Sergeant Bob says, China has unity in pursuing a goal possible with their totalitarian regime. We have a totalitarian regime, but no unity, thanks to Sleepy Joe. The difference is that we, as freedom-loving Americans, are taking positions. Of course, we are domestic terrorists, though, for disagreeing with big government. It's a good point, Sergeant Bob. Right? I can understand the desire for unity, but not at the sake of liberty. Right? We're not going to all just go hand in hand into the cells, are we? Super Iron Bob says, I agree with this guy on his analysis of the U.S. government's use of AI, but industry use, I don't believe he's right. The government's acquisition process is terabad for software. That's from Super Iron Bob. Yeah, I'm not, I'll take his word for it on that. I suspect he's accurate and he's right, because we've seen gross incompetence from every layer of our government. They can't even protect the Capitol building on January 6th when they've been warning us for months it's going to be a disaster. So what are they going to do with AI? Monster One says, I wonder if China would possibly do something to cripple the U.S., like a virus or something. That's a great idea. That's a really good strategy for them. Hopefully they're not listening to this show. Otherwise, they might release a global pandemic or something that would cripple America. That would be a problem. John Halgren says, I hear that all the lawyers on YouTube are merely AI creations run by China. Have to watch out for them. I can neither confirm nor deny that, John. We're going to move on to the next question, though. Uncomfortable. We have another one from Thunder7 says, then why are China always spying and stealing the U.S. tech? Maybe they aren't ahead at all, but they're trying to catch up with their number one competitor. U.S. military AI is about 20 years ahead of what non-military world is, but it's highly classified. Most innovative technology comes from Silicon Valley, then copied and stolen from China. Pompeo, Trump. Understood that. Thunder7 in the house with a good comment. Thank you for that, Thunder. We have Monster One says, what would be a great idea? China probably needs computer chips. Maybe we don't let them take Taiwan, where all the chips are made. Just a thought. It's a good thought. I think it's a pretty pertinent thought. A lot of people, I think, kind of poo-poo China. I've been to China. I went to Shanghai and Beijing, went and visited the Great Wall and the Forbidden City, and saw a lot of stuff there. And I think it did sort of change my my purview of the whole dynamic there. I do think that it is. I've said this before. I think that there are legitimate things that a nation state should be doing. One of them is protecting against other nation states. One of them is securing a border. One of them is promoting a legitimate money supply. Like, those are basic things. Going locally and telling parents that they're terrorists for speaking out at school boards, not legitimate. That's not an appropriate use of the nation state's power. The nation state should be doing things that individual states and individual organizations can't do alone. One of those would be rebutting a very aggressive, very powerful enemy on the other side of the world. Speculating there. Let's see. Well, a couple more here. Sergeant Bob says, in the Cold War, Russia, maybe Nikita Khrushchev, said the U.S., we will bury you. Focus was on industry. China does not have to say this thanks to Sleepy Joe and his troop. Seems like they are doing it. Yeah, China owns a good portion of U.S. industry in general, right? I mean, many of our supply chains are based over there. Major is in the house, says, if you ask me, it is no surprise that China, the land of communism, made AI first. For one, they've had a regular and celebrated tech expos that are more popular than our football. Also, it is a focus of the party as it helps them better control their people because there are few of them and more of the small people. I think we haven't made gains in AI because of freedom and ethical concerns. I think AI has no place in a truly free society. We can already see what the government is ramping up its own tech to surveil citizens as a main focus. The other reason is with true AI, what's stopping employers or owners from moving directly to using AI? They'd be cheaper, more reliable, more controllable than people. So where will people get their financial freedom to actually be free? If you support this, wouldn't you have to support UBI, Universal Basic Income? I've heard, the people replaced by machines will find new jobs, but new jobs aren't really being created to the same number in a macro sense. I think the competitive edge of AI is definitely a threat to democracy worldwide. I think this fact alone is worth going to war over to end before we all will be under surveillance by automated systems. Love your show. That is from Major in the house. Great comment. I agree with you on a lot of that. I think that I think that arguably many people are living under sort of a algorithmic slumber. They wake up, they see whatever's on Facebook, they go to the schools, they learn whatever they're taught there, and they go to the job, and they're sort of in this loop every day, not coloring outside the lines. Everybody just don't color outside the lines. That's too dangerous. You're going to be labeled a terrorist if you do that. And so you just put people in these little silos, these little ecosystems. You have AI constantly feed them new Netflix material. And everywhere they go, they get monitored. If they color outside the line, social credit score gets a flag. And that sounds terrible. It sounds awful. which means that's probably right around the corner, probably on Joe Biden's desk for an executive order. Look, 2G says, maybe China achieving AI first will be okay for us. After their AI starts murdering and enslaving its citizens, we can use that time to create countermeasures against their Terminator's robots. You know, that would make things a lot more exciting. There's no question about that. Terminator 2, huge fan of that movie. Amazing. Look to G says, thank you that. We have Vienticus says, we don't need to worry about supercomputers running everything. We'll just resurrect Richard Pryor. He destroyed that supercomputer in the Superman movie so he can save us. Yeah, there's a lot of those. We have a lot of Hollywood people who might be able to help. Speech Unleashed says, got to admit, I'm a bit glad the U.S. is behind in the AI war. Imagine the greater damage our government could do if they had that advanced power too. It's true, Speech Unleashed. They're going to get it, and they're going to try to use it. I don't have any doubt about that. Sergeant Bob says a 700-plus page paper does not equate to action. No question about that. Do you think any one of our senators or elected officials read more than 10 pages of that document? I'd say 10 may be generous. I probably read a lot more of that than they have. Now you have to. Isn't that nice? 700 pages, probably cost a few $100,000, took many, many months. And we're talking about critical race theory and masks. That's great. Let's see. Be Brave says, can the AI send me back to George Washington's day? I want to go back to that party. Well, you won't need to. They'll just jack that content right into your brain as they suck out your life force. Vienticus says, beware those realistic dolls that can have conversations with you. They're sparsely available now, but give it about a decade. Oh, man. Oh, Captain Jim says, grave as this segment sounds, I wouldn't write you off just yet. I think the private sector can outcompete the government, but because the government is a behemoth and an inefficient one. Tesla versus NASA is a good example. Even if Elon hasn't sent anyone to the moon or Mars yet, I doubt the Chinese government is this super efficient entity that doesn't mess up everything it touches. We'll top them, but not under the current admin. On a lighter side, can't help but notice your penchant for Travis Mathew apparel. Big golfer. No, I'm not a golfer, actually. I just happen to like the shirts. And I do wear a lot of them. They have a nice collar. I really like the collar on the Travis Mathew shirts. They're a little bit thicker. This shirt's a little bit too big for me, so it kind of hangs off. But they have really nice, thick, tall collars, which is why I like them. I really don't have the patience for golf. I can take about a few swings, and then I realize I'm terrible at it, and I hate it. Maybe in my older years, people say that all the time. You're a lawyer and you don't golf? No, I don't golf. I don't have the patience for it. Maybe one day I'll get out there, but we'll see. I agree with you on this, Captain Jim. I think you're right about this. Right? China is not without its problems. Remember, they're based on of a communist dictatorial system, and those entities always fail. They always fail. Look throughout history. They're going to have a lot of problems, just like America has a lot of problems. And so all of these gains, I think that you're going to see that they're going to get overextended. Their Belt and Road Initiative, their One China policy, One China, Two Systems, all of these different things, right? People are going to get tired of this crap. People, naturally, it's a human trait, I believe. They want freedom. Now, a lot of people will abdicate that, right? They sort of let that erode from their souls because they're scared. They've been conditioned as children or as even adults to be petrified of everything. Everywhere they turn, oh my gosh, I'm scared about this. I'm scared about this. People are operating on high levels of anxiety. And so they'll naturally give up that freedom in exchange for security. That's also a very human trait. It's sort of naturally ingrained into our souls and DNA. But the default, I've always believed, is freedom. That people, when they're put into a corner, when they're caged up, you're going to have a contingent of people, may not be a lot of people, maybe just 10% of the population that just say enough. We're not going to ever do that. China has human beings over there. The Chinese government is problematic, I would say, but they have a lot of people who love freedom, love innovation, and they're going to get tired of that. It may take 20, 30, 40 years, but we've seen it historically. They crumble. AI might be their solution to make that less inevitable, but I still think that freedom prevails. Good to see you, Captain Jim. Thanks for the very nice comment. Another one from Jeremy Matrita, long comments today, says, Rob, AI is a buzzword. It only frightens people. It's meant to do that. To tackle this topic, I recommend asking a few questions. What is artificial? What is intelligence? One could accumulate all information was ever created, yet still not know what to do with it. Machine learning been around for a long time. A lot of progress has been made. Training neural networks to complete tasks on its own after going through millions of iterations. AI is really a misnomer. Human intelligence is made up of a collection of many complex biological systems working together that creates a magnificent experience that we call consciousness. Machine learning is incredibly useful, will assist humans to improve at a neck-breaking pace. However, I believe when AI is touted as something it's not, it creates a fear of the unknown. A computer neural network is only as smart as it's trained to be. This report makes me think they're trying to make an argument for massive funding to keep up with China. Yes, bad actors are using AI to create and deploy malicious code. However, the good guys are also utilizing AI to defend networks as well. I love this topic. Encourage people to learn more on the topic. Yeah, it's a very fascinating topic. I know it's a little bit different from our usual fare here on the show, but I think it's very important. I think we're going to see a lot more of this in the future, and that AI is going to be a tool of the governments around the world. Don't like where that is going. John Delar says, I honestly don't see a way the U.S. doesn't go to war with China. It's pretty much a given. That's from John Delar. But do you think it's a hot war, or do you think it's going to be sort of a cold war? Donald Trump says, that's the right pronunciation now. China. That's how you have to say it. If you want to get it right. Skynet says, yeah, Skynet's here. I'm coming to prepare yourself. You won't be able to stop me. It's going to be fun watching you try. Skynet, Judgment Day coming up. X is here, says, when I first got into politics around 2012, Russia appeared to be our biggest rival and threat. Although they should not be underestimated, it is ridiculous how fast China has caught up. As long as China has an army of 1 billion workers, the Chinese government will continue to ambitiously seek more power and dominance. Meanwhile, here in America, we have division over gender and pronouns. This is ridiculous. Yeah, we have police departments that are shutting down all over the place because of mandates and defund the police. That's what we're worried about. Sergeant Bob says, my favorite line from Terminator, I think, says, come with me or there will be trouble. Sergeant Bob, that's not the line. You know that, right? You know that's not the line. You're just fooling with me right here. Come with me or there will be trouble. Like, that's what Arnold's for. Yes, okay. It's come with me if you want to live. Reaches out to Sarah Connor. Come with me if you want to live. Iconic as hell. Sergeant Bob knows that. He's just messing with me, probably. We have another one from Sergeant Bob says, I hate golf too. Yeah, it's a lot of time out there, and I don't drink, so what am I going to do? Peely Wally says, you're talking about giving up on freedom because of fear regarding the Chinese people fighting back against China, but that's exactly the same kind of mentality being used against the population of many countries regarding COVID. It's a good point. Yeah, it's a good point from Peely Wally with that global wisdom over from Scotland. Good to see you, Peely. Some super chats came in on this segment. Let's take a look at this. Let's see what we've got. Husker Mike is here, says, hey, you the MVP, Rob. I really enjoy watching your content. The Rittenhouse trial is going to be lit. I'm excited about the Rittenhouse trial. Not overly excited, right? We're talking about a young man who's facing some serious charges, but man, this is sort of the self-defense case of the century. And as a neutral observer who thinks he's innocent as hell, I'm looking forward to that trial. No question about it. Let's see what else we've got. That was Husker Mike. We got Curtis Bartle. Says, boomers can't help the losers. Good show, R&R. That's from Curtis Bartle. Thank you, Curtis. Appreciate that. And some person, super chat, that's the name, some person super chatted, says, I hear reports that China has to turn their streetlights off because of energy issues and drones falling out of the sky. Yet they've already won. I say scare tactics to get us on our game. It's a good point, right? It could just be just a big puff of whatever. When I was in China, they only let like half the cars drive on one day. So if you had I think an odd number of license plates at the end, you don't drive that day because they needed to get the pollution down because there was some event coming. And so you had to sort of alternate days. It's wild, but that's what's going on over there. We have a couple of questions over from watchingthewatchers.locals.com says, okay, the line was from RoboCop. I'm getting goofed on by Sergeant Bob. China still using coal and polluting their country with air that's putrid. They've been wearing masks forever. Maybe not so tech competent. It's a good point. We'll see. Like I said, they're going to have a lot of the same problems as the rest of the big governments around the world. Jeremy says, yes, our countries will go to war, but things will end a lot differently than expected when both AIs fall in love with each other, run off together, and leave both countries without AI. You can't blame them, you know. Yeah, it might be a good thing to run off into the digital sunset with your AI counterpart. Those were great questions over from watchingthewatchers.locals.com and YouTube. Thank you very much for all of your support. Okay, we've got one more segment left, and in this segment, we're talking about We talk a lot about bad popos and bad prosecutors and bad judges, but I think we've got a whole bad school district, I think. We're going to have to take a look at this one. On this show, we talk a lot about Florida man. Today, we're talking about several Florida men and Florida women. These are all teachers that have been accused of committing crimes against children of the sexual variety. And so we're going to go through this. We've like 4 or 5 different people here coming out of Miami-Dade in specific. Here's our first teacher. Her name is Calvi, Ari Calvi, age 41. She was having sex with a 15-year-old student, and now she's pregnant, according to cops. Oh, my goodness. You can see a picture of this woman here. So, obviously, a little bit older woman, apparently having sex with a 15-year-old former student of hers, and told a Doral detective that she was pregnant, according to Ray Valdez, a Doral spokesman. She was released from Turner Giffords Correctional Center on Saturday, submitted a bond, don't know what that bond is. She did not tell detectives how many months she was pregnant or who the father is. She is the 3rd teacher in Miami-Dade County arrested for similar charges this month. 3 in October. 3 teachers. 41 years old, 15-year-old student. She was put in handcuffs on Thursday, charged with lewd, lascivious battery, electronic transmission harmful to minors, unlawful use of communications, child neglect, offenses against students by authority figures, and contributing to the delinquency of a minor, as well as possession of a firearm on school property. Who is this lady? Did you see her? Possession of a firearm on school property? Out of control over there. All right, so here she is walking out of jail. Not going to see much from her, but we're going to bounce around and take a look at some of these other teachers. Here is Calvi walking out of jail.
Miss Calvi, what do you have to say about the allegations against you? Did you sleep with a student, a former student, Miss Calvi? Whose child are you pregnant with? Do you have anything to say to the victim? Anything you'd like to say, sir?
Okay, so, she's being charged with a crime. I happen to be a defense attorney, and I absolutely believe in the presumption of innocence and the right to due process and the right to counsel and the right to silence and all of those things. But we got something very interesting going on out of this one particular school county. This is not just an isolated incident. We have arrest reports from this case, says that they did a search of the student's phone. It revealed nude pictures of Calvi and the student. There was a WhatsApp message thread where the two texted each other, "I love you," and other romantic expressions. Calvi's credit card was being used for the student. There was an audio recording of the student telling an unknown person to deny knowing about their relationship. Police say the two had been together at several places outside of school, like Miami Beach. Oh my goodness. Calvi had been the student's former teacher at John Smith K-8 Center, which shares the same campus. Valdez with the police said you should trust your children, but as parents, you should always be cognizant of what your kids are doing and who they are hanging out with. Yeah, like a 41-year-old teacher at a beach in Miami. Calvi has worked with the Miami-Dade School District since 2001, been at John Smith since 2005. During her years, district says no history of any discipline. School district released a statement. They said, the county public schools here in Miami-Dade were disturbed by today's arrest involving inappropriate employee behavior. When the district was apprised of these allegations in March, the employee was immediately reassigned to a non-school site location. District will begin employment termination proceedings, will ensure the individual is prevented from seeking future employment with this school system. They're going to continue to review its employee trainings, ensure our workforce is fully aware of the district's professional expectations of them and their ethical obligation to safeguard children. And you say, well, that's a really nice statement. They're taking aggressive measures here. They moved her to a different non-school. So, okay, that's one way to do it. And they're going to be looking at other professional expectations and training programs and be fully aware to safeguard your children. However, very recently, there was another teacher woman by the name of Brittany Lopez Murray. We're going to see that she was also jailed. Cops say she had sex with a teen boy in her car over many months. And you'll notice this came out October 9th, so just a couple days ago. Helea, middle school drama teacher, been arrested. Police said she had sex with a 14-year-old former student in her car multiple times over the past 2 months. Also, booked into Miami-Dade jail. She's 31, a little bit younger, Brittany Lopez Murray. Multiple felonies, another lewd and lascivious battery, molestation, engaging in sexual act with a child. She was a teacher for 4 years without any other prior disciplinary history. And they actually named her Rookie Teacher of the Year in 2017. And you know what was funny is when I click this link, it takes you over to a Twitter post, presumably saying that she is Rookie of the Year. But this is what you get. Somebody deleted it. Don't you hate when that happens? Now, here, something interesting happened in her court appearance. This was her first court proceeding. Judge kind of forgot that she had a lawyer, and the government, I think, screwed up their release conditions request. So when you have a situation like this, we learn that this student was, in fact, 14 years old. There are different statutes that exist throughout the country. I'm not licensed to practice law in Florida, so I don't know specifically there. But in Arizona, if you're 14 years old and there's a sex offense committed against that minor, well, that's going to be considered what we call DCAC, dangerous crimes against children. And so that sort of elevates the severity of the crime because the kid is so young, right? The minor is so young. Different than, let's say, a 19-year-old and a 17-year-old. If you have a 19-year-old and a 14-year-old, that's a whole different equation that you're talking about, and the law responds accordingly. The law says, listen, if it's going to be something like that, we're not going to let you out of custody. We're just going to, there is no bond, right? Because this is such an egregious offense. And so I don't know the language in Florida, but it sounds like during her initial appearance, the government didn't recognize that it was in that category, that it was in the DCAC type of category. They call it something differently in Florida. But in other words, the prosecutor says, oh, she's getting released? Well, what about this? 14. Maybe we should revisit this. The judge says, no, it's too late. She's getting out of custody. And then the judge goes, oh, you have a lawyer too. And he's on the phone in his car. Weird thing going on. Let's watch this court proceeding.
Lopez for the stay away order that you requested.
Okay, thank you.
So
Good morning, Judge. Jeff Chakuma on behalf of
Oh, hi. Ms. Lopez, you were arrested. You have 2 separate cases, and I understand
Okay,
you
so
posted a bond. I brought you here to...
Let me start that over again because you could hear this. You could actually hear the attorney in the background saying, I'm appearing for the record. The judge just talks right over him. You're going to see Brittany come walk in and then take the bench or take the seat. She's going to be in the bottom right of your screen. Here that is.
Lopez for the stay away order that you requested.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning, Judge. Jeff Chakuma on behalf of
Oh, hi. Ms. Lopez, you were arrested. You have 2 separate cases, and I understand you posted a bond. I brought you here to read the stay away order.
Judge, I would like to address one more thing.
Yes.
Okay, so the defendant
This is the
was
prosecutor.
charged in F-21-17299 under the statute, which encompasses somebody who's has a custodial status over the victim. It should be a PBL, but
She
it was
posted
booked
a
as an
bond.
F1.
She already posted a bond. Your officer should have addressed this before they filed the arrest affidavit. I'm not going to adjust it. You'd have to file a motion for detention, I guess, a motion for modification of bonds and division. I brought her here strictly for stay away order.
Would Your Honor also order her to have no unsupervised contact with minors?
Absolutely fine. So, ma'am, you're ordered to stay away from the victim whose initials are FV. No contact with this child, either directly, indirectly, in person, in writing, by telephone, or through third parties. No contact with the victim through social media or other electronic means, and you must stay at least 500 feet away from his home, school, and place of his home and school at all times. Do not engage in any criminal activity. Do not use or possess illegal drugs, and do not use, purchase, possess, or carry a firearm, gun, weapon, or ammunition, and you must immediately surrender any firearms, ammunition, and any concealed weapons permits to the nearest police department and file a receipt with the court. Do you understand the stay away order?
Yes.
All right. Also, no unsupervised contact with any children under age 18. One other thing, are you going to hire a private lawyer?
She
Judge,
does have a private
we
attorney.
announced- Judge, good morning. Can you hear me? We announced our presence on the
Oh,
record
I'm
earlier.
so sorry, I didn't hear you. What is your
Yes,
name?
Jeff Chakuma on behalf of Ms. Brittany Lopez Murray.
Okay, thank you. I was just
Thank you.
making sure she had an attorney. I just brought her here to read the stay away order. The state may want to readdress her custody status, and they'll have to do that in division because she already posted her bond.
Thank you, Judge.
All right. Anything else then?
Nothing further, Judge.
No,
Good
nothing.
day.
Yeah, so that's pretty nice job, defense attorney. Yeah, just she's going to be able to be released. The government went back through their file and they're like, she had custodial, approval over these students, and she took advantage of them. That puts it into this category, and so maybe she should not be released. Judge says, well, your officer should have said that during the original indictment proceeding or whatever it is, whatever they call it there. So it's something that kind of screwed up on. The defense attorney's like, yeah, you're good. Get out of there. Nothing further, Judge. Thanks. So very interesting court proceeding. But it's not just done there. That's just two people. We got a whole slew of other teachers out of the same place. This is an October 6th story, 2021. It says that a former American high school teacher had over 600 child naughty pictures, very disgusting pictures, and videos. Former teacher at 3 schools had over 600 photos and videos of children, including images of a toddler. That's according to a resident, Hialeah resident. Guy's name is Robert Ortiz, took a guilty plea. Going to be sentenced to 6.5 years in federal prison. Previously worked at a number of different schools in Hialeah. So again, another one from October gets wrapped up. This was a prior case that happened some time ago. He took a plea deal, and that's getting closed out. But it's the list continues. Here is another guy, also October 4th, 2021. Doral Charter School art teacher sexually assaulted a 14-year-old student, according to cops. So we've got this guy arrested after police say that he sexually assaulted a 14-year-old during 2020, that school year. His name is Daniel Fernandez, 36 years old, had a $7,500 bond released there. 36, taught at a middle school, taken into custody on Friday, also charged with very similar offenses. Police said that he confessed to the allegations during the questioning, which is dumb thing to do. Court records list Leilana Quintaro as his attorney. Attorney did not respond to requests for a comment. Said a student said that this guy kissed her on the lips almost every day, according to an officer in a police report. And there were like 3 teachers in now out of the same Miami-Dade County. The hell is going on over there? And they just paid out $6 million for another case that happened in 2019. Jury orders a Miami-Dade school board, the entire school board, to pay $6 million to a student in a teacher sex abuse case. So they have known that this was going on for a long period of time. Federal jury ordered Miami-Dade School Board to pay $6 million to a former student of an ex-Palmetto high school teacher accused of harassing and sexually abusing a number of female students. In a verdict late on Friday, jurors concluded the school district, despite multiple warnings, did nothing to stop Jason Edward Myers. He was a creative writing teacher. Verdict found that he posed a substantial risk of sexual abuse or harassment, yet the district was deliberately indifferent in how it handled the accusations. Federal lawsuit filed on behalf of an unidentified student. It was the second lawsuit filed in the Myers saga. Earlier lawsuit came out with $1.1 million in settlement. Jury deliberated less than 2 hours in favor of the young woman. She was groomed into having sex with Myers, and the woman testified, as did several other victims. And so, there's always going to be people who commit crimes. Right? I'm a criminal defense lawyer, and I think everybody deserves an appropriate representation and day in court. But what we're seeing here seems like a pretty problematic pattern out of this one particular court. It seems like they're kind of papering over a lot of this stuff. $6 million now is due, another $1.1 million. They were on notice back when these cases were litigated, back in 2018, when these things were all working their way through the court system. They knew. And then in October, we still have sex crime. 3 different teachers in different schools, all with minor children. Strange stuff out of Florida. So that is a whole slew of Florida men, whole slew of Florida women. Not good. Let's take a look and see if you have anything to say about any of this stuff at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We've got WTF, Rob? Where were these teachers when I was in school at the age of 15? She's decent looking, at least to me. But then again, I find AOC and Saki attractive. The teacher, Saki and AOC, they're all crazy, I guess. Guess I like crazy. That's don't judge me. Saki is hot. Well, I don't know who that was. It sounds like it might be Zulu, though. I'm not real sure. I don't even know if Zulu is actually a part of locals. But Monster One says, I wonder if she's hot. Yeah, I mean, people are asking the most important questions, which is why I included pictures of her. You know, I mean, I don't know where I'd rate her on the scale, but she's not terrible. Sergeant Bob says, of course, innocent until proven guilty, etc. applies. Having said that, anyone, especially in a position of trust like police, fire, medical education, must, upon conviction or guilty plea, be incarcerated, at least. No excuses. And I'm with you there, Sergeant Bob. I think you should throw lawyers in on that mix too. I think that this is the reason why we're covering the story, right? I don't typically like to cover people who are charged with crimes, right? I mean, I have a lot of empathy for people who are charged with crimes. I think a lot of people are hurt and broken, and they deserve an amazing representation, just like anybody else does. And so I believe in that through and through. We've got a whole company here. We do that every day. But when you're in positions of power, you're elevated to a higher standard. Police, fire, medical, doctors, teachers, lawyers, judges, politicians, all of them are held to a higher standard, and they need to be held account to this. And it's not just these individual teachers, right? It's the entire school board out of Miami-Dade. What the hell are they doing? They're paying out like millions of dollars on the regular, and they've got new cases coming in faster than they can close them out. They just settled two cases, one for $6 million, one for $1.3 million, or whatever the numbers were, and they got three more. They closed two, signed up three more. So that's not good. It's going the wrong direction. We have a Thunder 7 says, these women are pedophiles, just like anyone would accuse a male teacher of having sex with a 15-year-old girl. They are mentally ill. They want to have sex with a child, should never be around anyone under the age of 19 for the rest of their lives, should never have custody of any child they might have. We have to protect children from male and female sex predators. And it sounds like they're trying to do that in Florida. Hopefully they stop new cases from coming up, but maybe they should be looking at the school board that is running the entire school system. How do you just get a sort of slew of pedophilic activity back to back unless there's a deeper root problem? Weird coincidence. Thunder 7, great comment. We have another one from Joe Biden, says, this is the extra credit component of the sex education units. Nothing to see here. Smell you later, kids. Is this the new Department of Education? Cardano over there? Gross. Monster One says, golf requires goofy pants and a fat ass. You should talk to my neighbor, the accountant. Probably a great golfer. Huge ass. That's from Monster One. If you don't know where that came from, that's from Happy Gilmore, obviously. Probably the best movie that was ever made. I don't think there's any debate about that. Thank you, Monster One. Jeremy Matrita says, I'm only playing devil's advocate, but what happened to equal protection? Age is typically a factor with regard to sex, but not as much as when it comes to homicide. They are considered children in these cases, but frequently considered an adult for homicide. Just saying. Yeah, it's interesting. And you know what's also interesting to sort of think through are the bond amounts. What did she get out on bond? What was it, like $7,500? What was that? What was her bond that she posted? Like nothing, right? If it was a male, I'd be curious, you know, a male and a 14-year-old, and it was sexual intercourse, not kissing on the lips. I wonder what that would be. Wonder what that bond would be, if there's a difference there. Good question, Jeremy. We have another one from Three Girlies is here. Yay. Says, the judge from the second teacher, she's already been on YouTube. She sentenced a person that was a friend while she was in middle school. She's already been on YouTube. What is it? Let's take a look at this one here. Three Girlies is in the house. Hope that judge recognizes a friend from middle school. Oh, okay. I'll watch that later. That is from Three Girlies. Interesting. Yeah, interesting. Okay, we have another one from Look2G says, I don't understand at this day and time why we as parents don't require schools to have cameras in each classroom. I can't think teachers deserve privacy when teaching 20 plus students. They should be held to a higher level of transparency. Talk to the teachers unions about that. Yeah, I mean, I think that would be pretty reasonable. Do you think that they'd be interested in that? I don't. Hunter Biden says, are these teachers having sex with each other as well? Can I join? He'll bring the crack and he'll bring all the drugs and the paintings. Saki is still hot. Says, you know, I always thought if it happened to me, I wouldn't say anything. It's every boy's dream, but who am I kidding? I would brag like crazy. You think Saki's husband brags? Hell yeah, he does. She's hot. That's from Saki is still hot. I want to know who that is. We have Monster One says, I didn't see the pictures. I listened to you at work with my phone in my pocket. I only pull it out, write a quick comment on locals. That's why sometimes there are typos. Well, Monster One, yeah, so I mean, look, I mean, I don't know what your version of hot is, but not terrible, not terrible. An attractive woman, I would say. I'd say she's an attractive woman, but that's not what this show is for. Those were great questions over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Had another super chat come in from Eric Highsmith over on YouTube. Says, watched you, Rob, since the summer of love in 2020 while I hiked the PCT. Now I'm a truck driver over the road. I listen to you while I'm driving. That's amazing, Eric. So, I absolutely have a soft spot for truckers, people who are driving. I think I said this last week, but you guys get picked on so badly. It drives me bananas. We have the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration. We've got all of these just overly burdensome rules because it's a federal entity and that's just what they do. So I appreciate the work that you're doing. We need you now more than ever. Supply chains are wrecked across the country. Thank you, Brandon. But people like you are out there helping and doing the good work. So thanks for being here, Eric. I really appreciate that and appreciate your support. Over on Rumble, shout outs to user1121 and W84HYM says, I think there's going to be a takeover on there. We've got on locals, final shout outs from Jeremy, Joey Bondolero. We've got Tremendous is in the house. Good to see Tremendous. Radicy, Mustang Jeff. We have Vienticus, as always, in the house. Speech Unleashed, and many others. Over on YouTube, final shout-outs to Raheem L. We got Happy65. We've got Samantha Richardson. Stace on the case. Catherine Ludrick. Zuluzite, Diane B. Lean is here. Hi, Lean. We have Paul Fairfield, Playing Hooky, C. Reed, and many others. And so that, my friends, is it for us for the show for the day. I want to invite or welcome a couple new people who joined us over at our locals community. We have Lynn Fish, who signed up very recently, along with Germs signed up over the weekend. Last week we had Sniper 275, Lau Patricia, Paula Revere number 2, HSDNP, Ty Livin, Maxim 27, Unbridled Form, Avia Tricks, Burnt to a Crisp, and Let's Be Fair. We also had R. Taylor, J. Muay Thai, Lula G, Maxim 92, Angel Baby, Hellraiser, Jumpin' Jeff, and Desert Daisy, all over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We're building a community over there, and it's a lot of fun. Join us on November 6th, 7 to 8 p.m. for our monthly locals meetup. A lot of fun. So mark that date down on your calendar, November 6th. We're going to do a Zoom. We get about 30 to 40 people on there. We talk about what is going on in the world. And we've been doing this long enough now that we have updates. We need updates from people. John Halgren, we're always asking what Jeremy's doing, and the list goes on and on. Sergeant Bob and Miss Lucky, they're moving. And so it's a community that we're building. We're trying to connect. We want you to be a part of it at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. And that, my friends, is it for me for the day. It's been a Monday. Had a great time with you on the show today. Hope to see you back here tomorrow. Would appreciate a like, a share, a thumbs up, a comment before you get out of here on the day so that we can continue to grow the show. Would mean a lot. Otherwise, we're going to be back here to do it all again tomorrow. Now, I forgot. Tomorrow is probably going to be a late show. I actually have to appear before the Scottsdale City Council tomorrow. It's going to happen at 5 p.m. So I need to go and I need to give my little speech for 2 minutes and talk about why I should be reappointed to the board. And I'm running against 2 other people. So it could be dicey. May not get reelected, but we're going to see what happens. It's for the Judicial Advisory Appointments Board. I'm trying to make a difference here in our local community by making sure we get good judges. And so at 5 p.m. tomorrow, Arizona time, I have to go down there. Got to put a suit and tie on and go up here in front of the city council to communicate what I think is the appropriate standard for judges in our city. And so I'm going to do a show, but I got to just scoot out of here, go make that appearance right down the street, and then I'll be back. So I don't know what time it's going to be, but it might be 6 p.m. It might be 7 p.m. It might be a little bit of a shorter show. So for those of you on the East Coast, I apologize if it's late, but we will be back and ready to go on Wednesday at the regular time of the regular show, 4 p.m. Arizona, 5 p.m. Mountain, 6 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. on the East Coast for that one Florida man and all those Miami-Dade teachers out there. Well, that is it for me. Have a tremendous evening. Sleep very well. I'll see you right back here a little bit later than usual tomorrow. Be well, my friends. Bye-bye.